Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chapter 6, verses 1 to 10. Shri Bhagavan Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sasannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyah yam sanyasamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sanyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati kaschana आरुरुक्षोर्मुनेर् योगम् कर्म कारणमुच्यते योगारूढस्य तस्यैव शमः कारणमुच्यते यदा हिनेन्द्रियार्थेषु न कर्मस्वनुषज्यते सर्वसंकल्पसन्न्यासी योगारूढस्तदोच्यते उद्धरेदात्मनात्मानं नात्मानमवसाधयेत् आत्मैव ह्यात्मनो बन्धुः आत्मैव रिपुरात्मनः बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्वैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत् जितात्मनः प्रशान्तस्य परमात्मा समाहितः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु तथा मानापमानयोः ज्ञानविज्ञानतृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समलोष्ठाश्मकाञ्चनः सुहृन्मित्रायुदासीनः मध्यस्थद्वेष्य बन्धुषु साधुष्वपि च पापेषु समबुद्धिर्विशिष्यते योगी युञ्जीत सततम् आत्मानं रहसि स्थितः एकाकीयत चित्तात्मा निराशीरपरिग्रहः. Hari Om, Namaskaram to everyone. Hari Om. The last we did was the fourth verse. Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadochyate. When a man is not attached to sense objects or to actions, having renounced all sankalpas, then he is said to be established in yoga. Yogarudasya. Arudaha. Arudaha means one who is established. Yoga Rudha was established in yoga. So the crux and the takeaway of the verse is, when a man is not attached to either sense objects or to actions, not attached to sense objects. Sense objects refers to the various receipts of stimuli from the world. Detached, not attached to the actions, refers to the responses back into the world. So in effect, you are detached to the entire process of receipt, reaction, response, the entire process of life. That's one a broad perspective you can see. Receipt of stimuli is the sense objects. Actions are the responses. So receipt and response is the entire range of action, the very traffic of life. You're detached to sense objects and actions. Now, when he says not attached, it doesn't mean one must withdraw from sense contacts and actions. This is how people have misunderstood the Shastras. When they say you must detach or not attach from sense objects, they have completely distanced away. It is not a physical distancing, please. It is not physically distancing from sense objects. It is not abandoning actions, but it is rather ensuring that you maintain a spirit of contact with the sense objects, you ensure you perform selfless actions. You get what I'm saying? People have misunderstood non-attachment to sense objects and actions as they have mistaken it to be completely abandoning sense contacts, completely withdrawing themselves from the contact of the senses with the world, or they have completely abandoned action itself. So not attachment to action doesn't mean giving up action. Not attaching to sense objects doesn't mean you don't establish contact with the senses. It only means you have a perfect control or mastery over your senses and the sense objects. At the same time, you don't withdraw from your actions, but rather you continue to perform unselfish or selfless actions until you hit yoga rudhasya. You get what they're saying? It is misunderstood to be one thing. This is how you must understand it. Non-attachment to action doesn't mean you abandon action. Rather, you perform action, but you are not attached to what I'll get to very soon. But firstly, he says non-attachment to senses or sense objects. What it means is you have no weakness to any particular sense organ or sense object. There is no weakness. You have a perfect mastery of your senses to all its respective sense organs. Eyes for the sight, tongue for the taste, smell for the nose, etc. So there is perfect sense control to their respective sense organs and pleasures you derive from sense contact. Nowhere in the Shastras they say that you must deprive, you must frustrate, or you must not contact the senses or sense objects. You have the freedom and the license to establish any contact with the world, with the sense objects. So sense abstinence is, so self-control is not sense denial. I repeat, sense control is not sense denial. Self-control is not sense denial or self-denial. It's not that you're denying yourself of contact with the world. It only means you have a perfect control over your senses and the sense objects. So much control that when any contact becomes a hindrance to your spiritual advancement, you would say, get thee behind me. I will have none at thy hands. I will not be interested. I will not fall a prey to you because you are becoming an impediment in my journey. But as long as you are able to establish a healthy contact with the sense objects, and it doesn't become a hindrance in your journey towards your upliftment goal of realization, and you establish a perfect control over the senses, you have every reason to establish a right contact with the world. That, in fact, is the right contact. The wrong contact is people either completely take the two, in fact, the two extremities. This is the middle path. The middle path, the medium between the two extremities. The two extremities are people are either completely indulging in the senses, they've completely become a slave to the sensual pleasures, they fall a prey to the senses, they worship the senses, they have become a sensualist. That is the object of their life, just to gratify and feed and pamper the senses. That's all their life is. That is one extremity. The majority of people fall into this bracket. A small minority of people have come to the other extremity where they have abandoned a life of sense contact. They're withdrawn into a shell, frustrate themselves. They have suppressed, repressed in the name of spirituality. And it is very easy to get to the extremities, isn't it? Any aspect of life, every aspect of life, there are two extremities. Either people give impulsively or don't give at all. Either people talk too much or don't talk at all. Either you give too much emotions and become emotional, or you say, I don't care. You give too much, you read too much without digesting, or don't read at all. People who are spiritual get into the non-essentials of religion, or people who are atheists. Very rare you find a medium in all these extremities. In every aspect of life. Either people over-exercise or don't exercise. The right amount of exercise, nobody does. Either you eat too much or you fast. Nobody eats the right amount of quantity and say, I think I've had enough. Thank you very much. Remember, we have learned, I think it comes, I don't know, Gayatri Ma, which chapter it comes. This knowledge is not meant for those who eat too much or eat too little, sleep too much or sleep too little.
Fourth chapter, Guruji.
Fourth chapter. Yeah.
Yes.
Verse 3, Ma.
I don't remember now. I don't remember now.
No issues. I think if you get hold of it, you communicate in the group, but
Yes.
there's a verse in the fourth chapter which talks about it. So this is the middle path I'm talking about. And this is symbolized where you have a perfect mastery of senses. Now, what are we explaining? Non-attachment to sense contacts. Non-attachment to sense contacts is a perfect mastery over your senses. That doesn't mean you don't deny yourself. You have every right to establish a right contact for each senses. If your tongue wants good taste, you can't punish your tongue by putting a spoonful of chili on your tongue. That doesn't mean, that is not sense control. If somebody offers you something delicious, please enjoy it. And that is not non-spiritual, isn't it? If someone gives you a soft fabric, you say, no, I should not give anything pampering the senses. Can you have any coarse material? Anything rough? Anything with jute, which is pricking and poking my skin? Then only I am not pampering my sense of skin. That is not spirituality, please. We'll go to maddening extent to misunderstand it. It's not that. It is to contact it, understand its limitation, a perfect mastery over it, and at every stage you are above it. You have no value for it. Now, It's a beautiful stage by stage or step by step analysis. I don't know if any one of you remember, we have done it a while ago. How do you test your level of detachment or level of renunciation with reference to any sense object or sense enjoyment? So what are the steps? What are the steps required to gauge your level of detachment or renunciation to any sense object or sense enjoyment? Write this question, please. How do you gauge your level of detachment or renunciation to any sense object or sense enjoyment? Okay, they're all the same. Now, the criteria. The first criteria is you must have a desire for that object. Adiji, are you there, sir? If it's difficult, if you're not there, perhaps we can request. Are you there, G? Right. Could you, how to gauge the level of detachment with reference to any sense object or sense enjoyment? Tinkima, I request you to hold back your wisdom. Where are you? There you are. Just hold back. And if you could kindly take a note, not that you're any wrong, but it's a beautiful analysis. It gives you a really fresh perspective. Not that you're wrong at all, please. Don't get me wrong. Okay. So the first thing is you must have a desire for the object. Point 2, you must have a value for that sense object. Desire is there. You have a value for the object. Thirdly, you have the capacity to procure the sense object. Fourth, you have the capacity to enjoy the sense object. 5, the sense object is available for enjoyment. And then you maintain a spirit of detachment. Then you have actually no value for it. If all these criteria, the 6 points you fit into, then only you can claim to have truly have detached or have a spirit of renunciation to the sense object. I hope you have got the order. I'm just reading out what Harish has captured. The first is you must have a desire for the object. Second, you have a value, means you have an interest in the object. Okay, you're interested in the object. Third, you have the capacity to procure. That is, materially you can procure it. Fourthly, you have the capacity to enjoy. It's your physical capacity. Fifth, the object is available. Is very much available for you to go and get it. And the sixth is you're not attached to it, means you have no value for it. You understand its limitations. So add on to the sixth point is you're not attached, you have no value for it. Then you can say you are a man of detachment. If any one criteria is missing, you can't claim yourself to be detached. You understand its limitations, correct? So in order, if you claim yourselves to be detached, non-attached, on what basis you say? You must have this checklist to assess yourself. Badriji, let's say, for example, if I go about claiming that I am perfectly detached to alcohol, I'm not attached to alcohol, I've risen above it. Is it right to say so?
No. See, it's taking it further from where you left off. The way I would emphasize the last point which is, I think, the most important point. Not that the others are not important, but the last point, I think, is the ultimate point, where, subject to all the other points, you're detached from it. So I'm just trying to give my understanding of the detachment. And the detachment is like this. If you are in it, if you are with that sense object, you have no difficulty moving away from it. And if you are away from that sense object, you don't feel a sense of frustration that you are away from it. So both ways, you're not frustrated that you're away from it. When you're in it, you have no difficulty moving away from it. So taking the alcohol example, supposing I take, I sit with a group of friends and have some alcohol. And if I can, move away from it and, not consume alcohol for months together, no problem. And if I'm not consuming alcohol for months together, if I have no craving for it, then I'm really detached from it. In other words, I enjoy it when I'm in it. I'm not frustrated when I'm away from it.
Correct. So you're right. So given all the above criteria are there, and then it doesn't really matter to you. It doesn't really affect you. You've already gone beyond it. Mentally, you have conquered it. Means it is there. It doesn't really matter. It could be months or even years you have not touched it. It's fine. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't bother you. Now, just to understand, perhaps if this helps, the degree of detachment is measured by what? It's not, rather, I would say, it's not measured by what is synonymous to what, rather. I'll get others in here. Tinkima, if I can ask you, the degree of detachment is synonymous to?
How often I think about it, or even when, there is not a conducive atmosphere, but I still dwell upon it or think about it or miss it.
That is attachment. No?
Attachment.
I'm saying the degree of detachment.
It makes no difference to my life, to my happiness, to my contentment,
No,
whether it's there or not.
No, I agree that which Badri said, you're also saying here. What I'm asking is, how do you measure this degree of detachment? Or it synonymously is measured with what? Or it's a quality of what, rather? It's a quality of what? It's synonymous to what? Is measured with what?
I think the degree of it depends on how much you long for it, how long the duration of the longing for it, or not wanting it, duration, length of dwelling upon it, or detachment. How do you measure it? When
No, I'm not asking how do you measure
no consequence in your life. It's of no consequence in your life, I would say.
Your thoughts are right, but I hope you're getting what I am looking at. Synonymously, detachment is measured with what? What is it measured with?
Detached.
Never mind. Okay, ma. Shashikanji, no problem. Any idea, Shashikanji?
No idea, sir.
Sir, you can't surrender so quickly, sir. No idea. No problem. Let's ask anybody. Subramaniam ji.
I think it can be measured that by how much time I give to it, how much I dwell on it, how often my thoughts go to it, and at the mental level, that's what I feel.
No, with all the answers, I'm wondering whether I've asked the question correctly. I hope I've phrased the question correctly. All of you are thinking alike. I hope you're able to get where I'm getting at.
Synonymous to.
Synonymous to is measured with is akin to,
or comes back to the same thing. The time I spend thinking about it at the mental
see,
level.
you're explaining detachment. I don't want detachment. How else? It's like an equal measuring scale. How else is measured with? Detachment, in fact, if I put it in another phrase, I'll answer it myself. My difficulty is not to question it that easily that I answer it myself. That's the struggle. Okay. Ushama, any idea?
Is it how peaceful or how content you are
Peaceful and
with
content.
without it also?
Okay. I don't think it is. You could, in fact, you could, in fact, perhaps I'm just trying to get to a particular aspect. Therefore, I'm approaching it. But you're not wrong. It's also measured with how contented, peaceful. A few of them are saying the same. Jyotsnama also says how calm or less agitated I am when I don't get the desire. Shivaji also says, no difference with or without it. Venkateshwarji says degree of frustration, feeling of contentment, sense of suffocation. What is suffocation? Pudusa irukka word is suffocation, Rajima. What is sense of suffocation?
Guruji, how suffocated you are with or without it, without your desire.
Okay, now I know in spirit where you're getting at. See, what I'm looking at, or what I'm not saying as you're wrong. You're thinking along with me. But where I was getting at is, it is measured, is akin to the strength of your intellect. Detachment is an attribute or a quality of what? It is a quality of your intellect, buddhi. And intellect is a product of wisdom. So detachment, if you want to measure your detachment, is measured with the strength of your intellect. And intellect is also a direct reflection of the quotient of your wisdom. All these three are one and the same. Wisdom, intellect, detachment is one and the same, philosophically. So, Subramaniam ji, now can we say the questioning was right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you get where I was approaching from? Huh?
We give the definition of detachment. Detachment is equal to, without this, I refuse to be happy. Attachment, I mean. Attachment is equal to, without this, I refuse to be happy.
Correct. It is a mental dependency.
Yes, mental dependence.
Yes. It's a mental dependency. And the opposite of that is a self-sufficiency, which is an attribute of the intellect.
That is right. That's right.
Yeah, it's the opposite, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, perfect, Ji. Now, if you go back to the points, you must have the desire. So you can't measure your level of detachment where you have no desire. I can't claim to be detached to alcohol. All my life, I have never had alcohol. I have no desire for it. So how can I claim to say, oh, I have renounced alcohol? A big deal, man. How can you claim to renounce something which you had no desire for? Isn't it? So you measure renunciation, you measure your detachment in areas where you have a desire. You are in it. You must be in it. And thereafter, it doesn't matter to you, in it or out of it. So bring that principle with reference to establishing sense contracts. So the absolute state of that is, a man of perfection will be moving around like any normal person. He will be contacting the world like any other person, but inwardly is 100% detachment. Why 100% detachment? For him, the entire world is illusion. It's not real. So he has no value for it, an absolute standpoint. But they're talking from an absolute standpoint. Now, when you bring it relatively, you can still contact it, but inwardly you have no value for it. You are not fallen a prey to it. It means that you're not a slave to it. It's a perfect control. So I'm only trying to see how we should approach this detachment or non-attachment to sense objects. It is not procuring. It is not enjoying. It is to procure. It is to enjoy and yet have no value. It is not to be understood as not enjoying. It is not to be understood as not procuring. You can procure, you can enjoy, you can contact it, yet have no value for it. Therefore, you don't judge a person by what you see them act. You should never ever judge a person. Just because someone is in luxury and comfort, you can't say he's indulging. You cannot. You should not. Just because somebody is in what do you call, puts on a robe or lives in bare minimum, you can't say he is what? What do you call such a person? Enna Rajima?
A yogi or a detached person.
You can't call him a person who's detached by the exterior. You know? So you got to see the thing. So now an example of perfect control, Harishji, you keep saying this very often. That's why I'm asking you. To conclude this, a perfect example of sense control.
I don't know whether this is what you wanted to were referring to, but in my case, having hot steaming idlis and still not having it.
Rajima wants to say something. You want to say something, Rajima? Okay. No, Ji. I'm not talking of idli here. What do you call yourself all the time? She openly keeps telling everyone. What is it you keep calling yourself?
Rat.
Another. What do you tell to the world of our relationship? What do you say?
At your feet, at the feet of the master. The
Yeah,
rat.
but then you say, you know, Hariji often keeps telling everyone, he says, I am his rat. No, the size of the rat, never mind, you know, but rat is a rat. Now, so what am I getting here, Ji? You know, when we talk of control, rat is symbolic to?
Self-control, because it keeps looking at that laddu.
Rat is symbolic to what? What does a rat symbolize?
Desire.
The mind and the insatiable greed. The greed and the insatiable nature of the desire is the rat. It's not a mere desire. It's the insatiable thirst of the desire is the rat. Because a rat is never contented. It's all the time in search, isn't it? And whenever you mention of a rat, you talk of the
Laddu.
Lord Ganesha. Isn't it? Lord Ganesha at the feet with plenty of
Laddu's there, but he
idlis are there. I don't think idlis are there in the huh? So that self-control, the epitomization of self-control is Lord Ganesha, who has an appetite for food. He has it. And then Ganesha, which symbolizes the rat. So Ganesha with a large head means the intellect, which controls the desire of the mind with perfect control. Isn't it, Ji? So all of this attachment, non-attachment to sense objects means all of this. Anything to say, Hariji? Right. So moving on, then he says non-attachment to your actions. So non-attachment to actions does not mean non-performance of action. It does not mean non-performance. It rather, in fact, means performing action with a spirit of renunciation. So when you perform action, what is it that you're detached to? You are detached from the appendages to action. And we may have spoken about it, we have talked about it, but just quick reference to it. Non-attachment to action doesn't mean inaction. Non-attachment to action means getting rid of the appendages to action. So action continues. You perform selfless actions, but what you drop are the appendages. Ramji, are you there? What are the appendages to action, sir?
The greatest appendage, Namaste Guruji, the greatest appendage to action is expecting the result, expecting a benefit out of that.
Yes.
I think that is the most important thing.
Yes.
But also another appendage to action is in today's context particularly is the I factor, where we say that taking a lot of credit for the action which was intended for others, so I always feel funny to look at pictures where people take a photo while giving out rations to COVID victims or for the poor people.
Yeah.
And publishing it in newspapers. So it is actually a perfect example of an action which is intended for the benefit of somebody else, but you are claiming your right over the fame for that action or the credit for that action. I think those are the usual appendages we find.
Yeah, there are little more to it. I will just come to it. Perhaps I'll get someone else. But when you said of taking photographs, this was maybe a year ago, or this has been almost 1.5 years ago. The wall, those of you who have come to the center, there's a wall right opposite to the center, which is a compound wall, the government municipality compound wall of the drain. And because of tree cutting, the coconut tree fell, our neighbor's coconut tree fell 2 years ago, and slowly the wall started giving way. And during the last monsoon, the entire wall has collapsed. And complaints have been done to the right person, and the authorities have come. And what they've done, they have come, they've stood, they have taken photographs, got published in the newspapers. And I also was there one standing because I was also called. Appa was there, I was there, all the so-called clowns came, stood, photographs appeared in the papers. Nothing has happened. The wall is in the same situation. Energy. This is a state of people we elect. They don't come on their own. We have elected to. But it's a very sad state, isn't it? It's everywhere. People don't do and they take credit. So the attribute of the doership, I have done, or it is mine and I would not ensure anybody else enjoy. I am the enjoyer only. It's mine. I only must enjoy. So you don't want to part with it. So that's another serious appendage, means which destroys the purity and divinity of an action. Right. Anything else? We can get somebody else to answer. Maniji, what do you think destroys the purity and sanctity and appendage to action apart from what is said? Any other point here? Any idea, Maniji?
No, sorry, Guru.
All right, no problem. Badriji?
Yeah, and not so obvious appendage to action is the feeling of guilt. Let us say you're a soldier who is ordered to fight, and let us say as a result of that you kill somebody. Now you have performed your dharma as a soldier, your duty as a soldier, and you've killed somebody. Now, as a result of that action, an outcome could be a feeling of guilt. Now, that feeling of guilt is destructive. It is not constructive. Now, you can feel compassion for the family or the people of the person that you have killed, which is a constructive thing, compassion arising out of that action. But feeling of guilt arising of that action is not good for you. It takes you away from your own sadhana or your own dharma. So it's a not so obvious outcome of action.
In fact, you have made a very good point. I would not have thought that way. But guilt is also an appendage to action, which is a burden. It burdens you. It troubles you. But why do you have to necessarily take an example of a soldier who has done his duty, being commanded to go and fight and kill, to defend its nation? He is just his dharma. He doesn't have no desire to kill. He's just done because he's been told to do. Why? What is there a guilty feeling arising out of it?
But many psychologists have said that many soldiers do suffer from that. So therefore it is destructive for the person. That is what I'm saying.
No, whether is the soldier an ideal soldier is different. Whether the soldier has any negative effects, whether he has any negative thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, whether if you have an inner malice when you do an act, then there is no guilt, isn't it?
That's true, but it requires a very special mind to do it very objectively. In the thick of battle, the psychologists have found that post conflict trauma, mental trauma is there, and it needs to be treated.
Yes.
But if they go through this kind of wisdom, then perhaps they can do their dharma without that. Without the negative outcome. And I just took that as an example. Guilt can arise from several other actions, and objectively looking at one's own motives while performing the action is good, but guilt by itself is not a very healthy reaction is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Discrimination, the guilt is different from discrimination. So
we understand the difference between guilt and discrimination, but guilt is an appendage.
Right.
You have to deal with it. It troubles you.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes, G. Tinkima, yes, please go ahead.
I think, Guruji, sometimes we ostensibly do unselfish or selfish actions, very well knowing that there is some indirect benefit for us when we do the action. So, it could be getting, people knowing about it, or we benefit in some other way. So although it appears as if it is selfless or unselfish, so that also becomes an appendage. Because knowing that I am going to be benefited in any which way, it could be materially, it could be because of, getting fame or being applauded or something, then, and I still go ahead with it, that I think is also an appendage.
But why you can't classify when you do an action with an objective to gain a fruit as selfless? Certainly you cannot.
Right.
Even unselfish you cannot. It's a pure deal of business. You are doing an act so that you get benefited somewhere else. It's a pure selfish thought, because if there is a personal gain, it could be reputation, it could be a physical benefit or material benefit or in some benefit in return. If you do that with that intention,
Then
It
it
is not
becomes selfish.
selfish. In fact, I request, or rather be very clear, that you all should be very discreet when you use the word selfless. Selfless actions are only those performed for self-realization alone.
Mm.
So you are talking, we will be talking of that term selfless in a very light note if you use it in any general parlance. So actions are selfless when it's done only for self-realization, for moksha or liberation. Anything below that is unselfish. And
Is
then
unselfish.
comes selfless. So, but unselfish is only for the other person. There's no I in it. There is no personal. So if there's some benefit or fruit or expectation, it is still selfish.
So here I have a doubt which I've been thinking about. I don't know if it's
Okay.
related now or we talk about it. See, if all of us are Atman, okay, all of us are reflection of the Atman, we have to realize that. Then whether I perform an action for others or for myself, am I in any way less of an Atman that I should only think of doing things that, only for others? If I do it for myself, it is selfish. But I'm an equal Brahman or Atman as other Brahmans and Atmans, no?
But if Brahman performs actions, okay. But Tinky is not Brahman yet, no?
No.
Therefore, it is different. When Tinky becomes Brahman, then it will be Brahman performing. Till then,
So-
let Tinky Ma perform action so that she becomes Brahman. After you become a realized soul, then there's no questions asked. Until you become one with Brahman, every action is scrutinized.
Hmm.
See, there is a standpoint. One is when every one of us a Brahman is from a standpoint of Brahman, but we are not there, no?
We are not yet there.
It's like, just to draw a parallel, imagine you're standing in front of the tallest skyscraper. It's got 108 floors, let's say. We are, let's say, the ground level or second floor, and Atman is at the 108th floor. So it's a there's a different viewpoint. There's an absolute standpoint, and ours is a relative standpoint.
Relative, yes.
You may be, let's say, 10th floor. I'll give you a few more floors. You'll have a beautiful view from the 10th floor, but it's a totally different view from the 108th floor. That's the difference. So you got to realize what standpoint you're talking from at every point, and then it becomes clear. All right.
So to get to Brahman, first I need to do the unselfish actions and selfless for others. Then we'll talk about.
Hello. I told, don't use selfless. That selfless
Selfish,
word
unselfish.
must be forgotten. That word, please forget it.
Okay.
You must try to get to the 11th floor, 15th floor, 20th floor, 40th floor, and then we'll think of 108th floor.
Okay.
So it's unselfish. Keep using the word unselfish. Selfless is extremely tough. It's the highest action.
So that means any action that I do for myself, save attending these, anything to do with knowledge or gyan yoga, any other thing, or bhakti yoga or karam yoga, any other action I do for myself is selfish?
No, when you do it for your self-development, your self-purification, for self-evolution, it's not considered selfish. But if someone comes here to showcase their knowledge, here is a guru who allows me to talk whatever I want to talk, whenever I want to talk. Appa, let's showcase what all I know. Imagine if somebody has a thought like that, then you're coming here for some kind of publicity. You're trying to showcase your knowledge. You're not coming for learning. If that's the thing, I don't think there's anyone like that. Okay. But for your betterment is not considered selfish. Okay.
Thank you, Guruji.
Most welcome. Yes, ma'am. So a few additions here. Venkateshwarji says expecting publicity, recognition, appreciation. So that's again some kind of return you want. Gayatri Ma says parents supporting the children in spite of their faults. How can this be considered appendage to action? Innama, which topic are we in?
No, not appendage. When Badriji took the extreme example of soldier, I was thinking that the simplest one is Mostly the parents support their children in spite of knowing that they have done their fault. Like recent article, like a drunken person was arrested. The father was in the electricity department and he cut the electricity of the signals and the police office and all like. So it's an extreme thing.
But they know that what they have done is wrong.
Yes.
The sense of guilt. Right. Perfect. That's okay. Right. Joshnama is saying action that is not guided by the intellect will have all appendages of self-performing. Self a capital S podninga. So I would think of that. Capital self has no appendages, only the little self, good or bad, as long as the self of feeling doership is present, we're all selfish. Yes. So where there is a selfish thought or an appendage, which is an intention. So intention is an appendage, which makes an action, which troubles the action, which it is an impure element in action. Appendage means an impure element. If you are only acting on the base need of the hour, it's selfish. No? I'm only doing this because it's needed. Then afterwards, I'm not concerned. If there is unconcernedness thereafter, it is selfish. So what else is appendage? You will have your worries of your past. If you're constantly worrying of the past, which disturbs your performance of action, your anxieties of the future is what you said, egoistic notion. So some of this, perhaps there are a few more. So all of this. So renouncing all these appendages and performing the action is non-attachment to action. That was the first half. And then he says, one who has renounced all sankalpas. Renouncing your thoughts. Renouncing your thoughts means renouncing your past memories. We all can learn from our past, but we must not live in the past. How many of you live in the past? I know many people live in the past, if not many. As Rajima says, all are living in the dead past. That is renouncing all sankalpa. So renouncing sankalpa, you can learn from the past, but not live in the past. You must learn to renounce your thoughts. That is a beautiful saying. The arousal of a thought is sickness. The arousal of a thought is sickness. Not continuing it is medicine. Arousal of a thought is sickness, is a mental lacuna, is an imperfection. Arousal of a thought is sickness, an imperfection, or a lacuna. Not continuing of it is medicine. So beautiful, isn't it? Non-continuance of a thought is medicine. To allow a thought, arousal of a thought, continuance of a thought is a disease. Is sickness, is disease. That is on a negative context, arousal of a thought. Now, on a positive sense, there's another beautiful saying, time is of no account with great thoughts. Time is of no account with great thoughts. They are fresh today. They are fresh today as when they were first passed through the author's minds ages ago. Time is of no account with great thoughts. They are as fresh today as when they were first passed through the author's minds ages ago. On one side, we say arousal of a thought is sickness. On the other side, we say it is all right to entertain certain great thoughts because they are always fresh, as it was first aroused in the minds of a great soul. Huh? How do you, what is the difference in the two? Both are thoughts. On one quote, we are saying arousal of a thought is disease, non-continuance is medicine. Another quote I'm saying, there's no, time is of no account with great thoughts. It has a certain freshness, like we are recalling the wise words of great men. So there's a very thin line, isn't it? What is that thin line? Yes, Rajima, truth is always the same in all periods of time. First is a negative, second is a positive. Yes, great thoughts and great souls is a thin line. Any further difference anybody can draw? Setuji, any idea? Can you differentiate the first quote and the second quote? Have you got the quote, sir, with you? Harishi, have you got it? Have you captured it, sir, by any chance?
Time is of no.
This the first one is with selfish desire. The other one is unselfish or for higher purpose, thought for higher purpose.
Okay, can you explain the first quote? The arousal of thought is sickness, not continuing it is medicine. Can you explain that?
See, vasanas leads to thought, thought leads to desire. So any arousal of thought as jivas, it is all desires.
And then second half, not second continuing is medicine.
Sages are realized souls.
No. Second half of the first quote itself.
Not continuing is medicine, because if we discontinue the thought, it is good. No desires. The desires are, we are curbing the desire.
All right. Yes, you're not wrong. So, to make it easier or simpler, the first half of the quote is when you operate on the mind, when you're unconscious, it is negative. Non-continuance is a conscious act. It is by the intellect. It becomes positive or is negative. Ilya? There's another beautiful phrase which says, I know of no more encouraging fact. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of a man. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of a man to elevate his thoughts by conscious endeavor, which is what we all are doing now. I know of no more encouraging fact that the unquestionable ability of a man to elevate his thoughts by conscious endeavor. Are we not consciously trying to instill a higher thought, embrace a larger wisdom, elevate our thoughts? So when these masters say, renounce all sankalpas, I'm trying to bring it a sense of applicability or abhyasa. What is abhyasa? Don't live in the past. You learn from the past. If you're living in the dead past, it's negative. The thought is the same, it's negative. Arousal of thought is negative. Non-continuous is medicine. So if you approach it in this way, any conscious thought is a medicine. Any unconscious thought is a disease. Both are thoughts. Any irrational thought is disease. Any irrational thought is medicine. Isn't it? So this way you can try to march towards where we'll come to a point where all my thoughts are dismissed. That's the ultimate. Again, 108th floor. Come back to relativity. How do I reach that state of absolute where all thoughts are dismissed? Get to it from step by step. How do I handle unnecessarily past memories are coming and bothering me? How do I drop it? Drop it. It's a pain. It is hell. My past should not come and haunt me. In fact, when one has no memories of past, what would happen? What are the benefits of having no memories of past? It is rather difficult, but you must know what are the benefits. At least that will encourage you, isn't it? The question is, what are the benefits of having no memories of past? Very brilliant, Tinkima. Where are you? You're Rama. No memories of us, live in the present. Correct.
So when we are in the present, there's nothing. There's nothing.
You're not in the past. When you're not in the past,
nothing.
when you're not in the past, you're in the present.
No, because when you're in the present.
What? No. Yes. No. When you are in the
yes.
present, you're not in the past.
No, what I meant is when you live in the past, you're sad or you're hurt or guilty or bad, feel bad. When you're in the present, you're not in the future. So there are no worries or anxieties or fears. So being in this moment, that's what I meant.
No, I get what you're saying. So what's the question, Ma? What are the benefits of having no memories of past? Any other? There's more to it. That's why I'm asking. What are the benefits of having no memories of the past?
No sad, not fearful, not anxious, not worried.
Yes. All that accepted. What are the benefits? What else happens?
The intellect works
Shivaji?
and you're not, the mind doesn't take over.
Mind doesn't take over. Yes, yes. I'm just getting others involved, Ma. You're right.
Okay.
And Shivaji.
Yeah, when you drop the past, the complaints are always about the past. You keep complaining, whatever it is. When you drop that itself, you are much more. In fact, I will put it in other terms. You're absolutely spiritual when you drop the past in the present moment, in the given situation. So it is definitely essential that we drop the past, but your present is nothing but continuation of the past. We can't let go of that, which means that at least we should correct our present, which could lead us to the future. So in that way, the present, we cannot forget the past in the sense, it is a continuation of the past. So you think that you do now would only lead you to wherever can lead you. And this complaints is a very, very big thing which we carry on.
Sir, I have got a very big complaint about your network. I have a serious, not I, every one of us have serious complaints.
To be in the present moment. Drop.
Okay. The host, please
Drop
mute
from the
Shiva.
108th floor or whichever floor we are in. Drop the complaints.
We will have to mute you, sir. No, we are muting. Sir, we have serious complaint about your network. That's the reason I don't get to ask you, because always I realize you have a difficulty in your transmission. You may have to kindly
In
look
fact,
into
I am
it. So that,
conducting sessions every day.
no, we have had this issue all the time. Maybe there's something that could be checked at your end, please. Okay, but we gathered. I heard very intently what you were saying, and you have a very valid point, no doubt. I think what he was saying is we should never complain. At the same time, he said that the present is nothing but the continuity of the past. We've got to learn from the past, but not brood over the past, because it only makes, if you are living in the past, it always makes you a pessimist. As we know, you're only negative and complain, yes, a few points have rolled by in the chat box. Maniji says mind is empty. Yes, when you have no memories of past, your mind is empty. AK Maniji is saying, so you're able to receive more. You're very right. Rajima has beautifully said, yes, we must always remember there is this ordainer. So why should we have memories of past? Past memories will haunt us. Yes, if you have no memories of past, you will not be haunted, correct? You'll be a blank slate. There is no point of reference from the past, so we can enjoy and act in the present and clean slate. Very true. There's a beautiful saying, which is what happening. The power of sankalpa can bring more storms into the bosom of a man than the disturbance his mind could ever receive from external world. I repeat, from the power of sankalpa can bring more storms. The power of sankalpa can bring more storms into the bosom of a man than the disturbances his mind could ever receive from the external world. I've just picked up these beautiful sayings to the course of study, and it's a very, very beautiful saying. What I hope you get the implied message here. I read once again the quote: "The power of sankalpa can bring more storms into the bosom of a man than the disturbances his mind could ever receive from the external world." So the thought you entertain can create a storm than the actual point of disturbance which is caused from the external world. So somebody could have said something, somebody could have done something that could have disturbed me. That doesn't cause more damage than the power of my own sankalpa, which is the negativity, the brooding factor. If I allow my own thoughts to constantly keep linger, as I said, the arousal of thoughts is sickness. The power of that thought is so strong. The power of sankalpa is so strong. It creates storms within me. So repercussions of me entertaining the thought is far greater than the actual impact of external disturbance. So I am living in the past, making my present as troublesome than what actually happened. The person who said something, in fact, has never intended. Arey pa, I didn't mean that pa. He didn't mean it. It was just passingly said with no genuine intent. In fact, I remember I felt a little guilty thereafter when I knew it. Many years ago, I'm talking about this more than 20 years ago, a colleague of mine from the ashram He was a lover of food. Oh my God, he used to enjoy food. And he was in town. He was visiting Hyderabad those days. And I told, in a casual note, I told him, hey, Vapa, you'll be very well fed in the house. You anyway enjoy food, no? Amma to solra, she'll make lovely food. And he took to heart. And he didn't turn up that day, nor he kept a little aloof thereafter from me. Until I realized it was hurting him that he felt that I had actually insulted him. He felt I said something which hurt him. And it bothered him apparently thereafter. Until I came to know, I said, hey, Pa, I was just so casual. In fact, I was wanting to come home and we could spend time together. I invited you to the house. Why will I insult you, Pa? See, there was no intention to hurt him. But you have taken wrong, and the thought you brood over it, the storm it creates in your own mind, in your own bosom, is far greater than that. Is the power of sankalpa. So if you have no memories of the past, you will live a life of bliss and happiness. You will be truly blissful and happy because you have no memories of past. And also, one other thing, if you have no memories of past, you have no ego. A child has no ego because he has no memories of past. A madman also has no ego because no memories of past. A drunkard also has no ego because he has forgotten who he is. Anybody can support that? Hariji, if a person is completely drunkard, Rajima is raising hand of all person. People, yes, Rajima. A drunkard has no memory.
Guruji, I was thinking about Ram Ras Dhan Payo.
Is that the right?
I'm drunk on bhakti. I could be drunk on bhakti.
But I didn't talk of that bhakti. I didn't talk of that ras. The ras I was talking about some other ras. No. So when you have, in temporarily I'm saying, so a child has no ego, a madman has no ego, a drunkard has no ego, because temporarily a drunkard, his memory of his what he is lost. It's cut off. He's approachable, he's accessible, he behaves as if he's a normal person. He doesn't know what he is. It happened in one case that an ambassador of a country was drunk and he had a brawl in a pub and he brought disrepute to his country. When he was so intoxicated alcohol, he did not know that his actions will account to being tarnishing his country. So the headlines of the paper, such and such an ambassador found drunk and got into a brawl in a pub. And he was pulled up by the appropriate ministry. And he had to pack up his bags and come back for one stupid act. But why he could do that? Because he has no knowledge of what he was. Temporarily, that state clouded his notion of what he is, no ego. So ego is nothing but memories of your past. So a spiritual man, therefore, is compared to like a child, is compared to a man, compared also to a drunkard in the context of Ramras. It was not intended, but it is all in line to what is said. Don't quote me out of context. Huh? Rajima, you were saying something? So a madman, no. So memories of, if you have no, so we don't understand how this past thoughts come and disturb how it becomes a hindrance in our sadhana. This all is the standpoint of Vasantama. All of this discussion is from the standpoint of
relative.
Relative. 10th floor da. Relative. Absolute is all sankalpas when you renounce, then you're established in yoga. So relatively to the extent you have conquered the sankalpa. In fact, those who are working on takeaways can beautifully capture it. Thinking around the concept of sankalpa, all the points we have discussed, given this quote, so we have a beautiful concept how you can approach this thought, sankalpa. And if it is well nurtured, how it's an asset. If it's not nurtured, if you fall a prey to it, how it can become an impediment. So relatively you conquer it and absolutely you overcome it, then you're established in yoga. Why I spend so much time on this verse is because at the ground level, we are all paying a price of this, isn't it? At some level or the other, at something or the other is haunting you. So if you are able to overcome that and apply this principle to it and handle it, it'll give us great comfort and peace and happiness. Okay. Yes, Hariji? Are we right, Ji? Right, sir. We'll come back. Yeah. You want to say something, Seturaman Ji? Okay. Right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.